There is a good chance that when you started out as a career and a personal trainer, that's what you wanted it to be. You wanted it to be a career. You wanted a fulfilling, a long-term job that not only was helping people with their physical well-being, but also their mental well-being. But then after a while, sometimes that excitement can start to fizzle out. So, how can we avoid that burnout so that we can have a fulfilling career as a personal trainer? That is the topic of today's episode. And I have with me an expert to talk about this, Jessica Maurer. So, welcome to the Solo Trainer Podcast. This podcast is for personal trainers, solopreneurs. I'm Ginger Asimas. I'm your host. I've been an independent personal trainer for almost 9 years. But the star of today's show is my good friend and colleague, Jessica Maurer. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Jen. I'm super
Yeah.
excited about this conversation.
Oh, me as well. So let me dive into who is this awesome woman that is with us today. Jessica Maurer has over 20 years here in the fitness industry. She is a recognized wellness business consultant, strategist, and keynote speaker dedicated to helping professionals overcome burnout and cultivate mental wellness. Through international presentations, workshops, and consultations, she empowers individuals and organizations to move from overwhelm to clarity, resilience, and sustainable success. With a dynamic stage presence, Jessica delivers actionable insights, fresh ideas, and inspiring strategies that drive personal and professional transformation. Her expertise in wellness, leadership, and career growth positions her as a sought-after voice for fostering balance, emotional health, and lasting impact in high-pressure industries. So that's the summation of Jessica, but I want to share how I know Jessica. And I met Jessica at what would be now almost 2.5 years ago at Idea PTI when it was here locally in the Northern Virginia area. And I went to her presentation. It was one of the very first ones in the morning that I went. We were one of the first sessions. And I was just, from her whole presentation was just like talking about business, and one of her quotes that she offers is not your jam, don't be doing it, basically. And I was like, at the time I was like starting the solo trainer, and I know that I needed someone to help me build this, to create it, to keep me on task, to keep me organized with it. And I afterwards went up to you, Jessica, and talked with you, and we just started then ever since. So Jessica's my business coach, and so she's been working with me and now alongside with my husband for 2.5 years, and it's been such a pleasure. So I'm so excited. Thank you for joining us today to talk about this topic.
Absolutely. I'm so glad. And thank you for sharing that story too, because often, we go into situations like this and we read the bio that we have written on our website and everything else, but it's always so nice to come back to the human part of this, that we actually just connected because we had so much in common. And so I'm so honored that I get to be on your podcast now.
Thank you. And I've enjoyed getting to know you over the years too. We've gotten to connect in other levels also. So it's been so fun. So yes, having a sustainable career and for longevity and to avoid burnout. So maybe one of the first things we can think about is kind of defining what does that mean, having a sustainable career?
Oh, that's a great question, because often we say things because it feels like a buzzword, but we don't actually understand what the connotation is. So typically when someone's talking about a sustainable career, what they're actually talking about is building a career that makes them feel energized and not depleted. I mean, professionally, that can mean having a business model that supports you having constant and consistent clients. Maybe that's a business model that allows for you to have more personal time than professional time. Maybe this is a way that you can work in balance of having a family, hobbies, recovery, and self-care. Everyone's idea of a sustainable career looks and feels so drastically different. And so when I'm working with clients, one of the first things that I have to ask them is, what does success look like for you? Because it's going to look different between what I think success is and what you think success is. And then we have to talk about, what is happiness? What actually lights you up? As you mentioned before, what's your jam? Because everyone's going to have a different level of happiness as well. When you take that definition of success and that definition of happiness and you integrate them together, then you can start to really describe what a sustainable career is. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when we're talking about creating a career of longevity, it centers around energy, your physical, your mental, and your emotional energy, making sure that it's something that you can keep giving to your career throughout the rest of your life.
I think that one thing that sort of, when thinking about sustainability, at least in my mind, what kind of first things about I want a sustainable career is the monetary piece of it. Am I
Mm-hmm.
making the money I want to make? But it's so much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so all those other factors that you're talking about. So, because honestly, the money does matter to some extent, but what matters more are all those other pieces that you're talking about on having a career that you love. And as you sort of talk about the energy component and how that is, I mean, that's like, I feel like a big reason why people will leave the gym to go work for themselves is because they're being drained so much of their energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's talk more about they're being burnt out. They're getting burnt out. So how do we define burnout? How do people know that they're kind of maybe burning out and they need to make a shift?
You know what's so interesting about the fitness industry is that with all the clients that I work with, I see two things. I see burnout, which means that you're overwhelmed. You have too much on your plate, it's too much of everything. And it comes across as feeling like chronic fatigue, you're lacking motivation, but you're also irritable and you're insanely cynical. And like nothing that you do, you feel like nothing that you do is making a difference. You're just constantly treading water. On the other hand, the other half of my clients are bored. They're not dealing necessarily with burnout, they're dealing with boredom, that every day is the same. That if I have to teach a person how to squat one more time and pull my eyelashes out, I'm using the same cues that I've used for 20 years. I'm teaching the same class that I've taught for 20 years. So we definitely have these two connotations in our industry of you have way too much and you're overstimulated, or you don't have enough and you're bored. And that can look like, it can make you feel listless. It often looks like you don't have enough challenge, that you don't have enough engagement. You're just kind of very separate and your mind is wandering constantly, or you're daydreaming instead of being focused at the task at hand. So when it comes to working with personal trainers, there's definitely this big difference of burnout versus boredom. And it's important for us to know what we're feeling, because the solutions are completely the opposite. If we're burnout, if we really are overstimulated, we have too much, our coffee cup is overflowing, then rest is the first thing that you need. But if you're bored, then you don't need rest. You actually need a new challenge. You need the opposite of rest. You need something that you can go out and accomplish. So coming to terms with, oh, I'm not actually burnt out, I'm just bored of using the same cues over and over and over again. Well, we can handle that in a different way than I'm way overstimulated and I need to take a break.
That's a very interesting distinguished, but comparison or showing that for burnout you're needing rest, for boredom you're needing a challenge,
Yes.
and that gives you direction on where you need to go. And as you describe all the things about burnout and what that looks like or what that feels like, I'm think a lot of people can probably relate to that. I know that I can, based on
Mm-hmm.
even my experience at the gym. Like I said, why I left, I was completely just like burned out, mad at the family, didn't want to see clients. But I've also, to be honest, I'll be honest, have dealt it with in my independent time. So you've got to, even if you're for one of those that are kind of thinking, okay, I think the gym, I'm getting burnt out here and I want to go on my own. You have to be careful that you don't end up causing burnout there as well. So maybe we ought to talk about some ways to kind of, one, if you're in burnout, what kind of the next steps you should take, and then we can lead into how to avoid it.
Oh, great. So when you're burnout and you know you're overstimulated, you've got too much, your cup is running over, and you just feel, like you said, irritable, cranky. It's this almost underlying level of rage. It almost sounds like we're describing perimenopause, but this is also burnout, right? Just underlining area of I'm going to strangle someone. That's definitely burnout versus boredom being listless, right? So with burnout, you want rest first and foremost. So how many things can you start to say, hey, I need the next week. I need to unload some of these things and delegate this so that I can take a week to kind of come back into myself. The next thing is you need to sit down and assess what is your jam and what is not your jam. Oftentimes we become burnt out because we're trying to do all the things. And as much as we are insanely talented humans, we cannot do all the things all the time. We're never going to be super target. We're never going to make everyone happy and we're not be good at everything. So we have to go through our schedule and decide what is my jam? What am I really good at? What do I really enjoy? And where are my duds? What's bringing me down? What is overwhelming me because I don't like it or I don't understand it? A great example that I use often with the majority of my clients is, let's face it, a lot of fitness trainers and coaches hate anything to do with money. Collecting money, doing expense reports, taxes, whatever it is. If they have to count past 8, for the most part, fitness professionals are out. And so when it comes to that, whether it's running your payroll or paying yourself every month, look for people who have the solutions for you already there so that you're not spinning your wheels. You're not having to recreate the wheel over and over again. There are services out there that can provide the answers for you. Little hint, hint, nudge, nudge for the solo trainer. But there are ways that you can delegate and automate the services that are draining you. Or look, if you're a type A personality and somehow you've gotten roped into teaching yin yoga on Friday nights at 8 p.m. and it's the thing you dread most in the world, it's time to get rid of that class. It's time to pass that on to someone who it is their jam to do that kind of content. So rest is number one. Figure out what your jam is and start to drop your duds and delegate and automate things that you don't want to spend your energy and your time on. And the next one is find support. Oftentimes, working in the fitness industry can feel isolating because you aren't interacting with a lot of people. You are in your little bubble by yourself. Maybe you're in your studio by yourself. Maybe you're training in your home like Jen does, or maybe you're the only personal trainer at your studio, at your boutique. It can feel isolating. And so putting together a little huddle team of your board of advisors, essentially, coming together and having communication with them on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis so that you realize that you're not so alone and you're not going through these things by yourself, that other personal trainers are also extremely tired of telling people to put weight in their heels when they squat. And when you find that you have other people who feel the same way as you do, it's so much easier to overcome those burdens because you know you're not alone.
Yeah, 100%. So like even thinking about what I've been with the rest, finding those things that you can kind of that aren't necessarily that you can kind of get rid of off of your plate. Because sometimes we put a lot of stuff on our plate that's like, it doesn't have to be there. And we need to go ahead.
Yeah, oftentimes we say yes to things because of the scarcity factor. We're so
Oh, yeah.
worried that if we don't say yes to this client, no other clients are going to come around. If we
Yes.
don't say yes
Yeah.
to this class, no other class is going to come around. And so we say yes. And like you said, we've picked up these things and suddenly we have a backpack full of rocks and we're like, why does this feel so hard? Well, we kept picking up things. And sometimes we just have to take a moment to reassess and go, this actually isn't what I wanted to do. I really wanted to work with pre and postnatal clients. Why do I have more active agers or vice versa? So you got to really decide what your jam is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's that scarcity mindset, as you said, that just can keep you saying yes when you need to say no. And I always I don't know where I first heard the phrase that when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, or you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. And if you're really wanting like a career that you love and enjoy, you have to, it's hard. It's really hard to say no to, I think also as the professionals that we are, we really want to help people. So we tend to just think about helping them before going, you know what, this doesn't really fit well for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just kind of go along with it for a while. And so it's hard. It definitely is. But I'm encouraging if there's someone out there that's like, I'm burnt out and I know that there's stuff that I don't enjoy that you're doing that you feel that's not your jam. It's going to be really hard to tell someone no or to make that shift. But I promise you, when you do, you feel so much better. You do. Because it's like was training afternoon clients. And this is a more recent one for myself, that I was training afternoon clients. And I start with clients at 5 or 6 in the morning, and I can go straight till noon with people. And then I would come back and I had someone in the afternoon, and I was just so burnt out. And I didn't, I love that person as a person. I actually knew her personally, which even made it harder for me to say, I'm sorry. But I was like, I can't, I had for myself to say, I can't do clients in the afternoon because I need that time for admin. I need that time for rest. I need that time to, for other things. And so it can be hard to do that because it can, impact your income that you bring in, but it can also, of course, it impacts relationships. But once you free up more of that space for yourself, it makes a big difference. It's just hard to do.
Absolutely. I like to tell people there are 3 ways that you can say no. You can just simply say no, thank you. You can say, no, this isn't for me, but I know someone that would fit better, or not right now. Maybe this is a 2026 opportunity. So you don't have to just say no and be it, right? You can say, no, this isn't for me, but my best friend down the road is an amazing instructor who would love to work with you. Or I'm a little full right now, as we were talking about earlier, the Burr months, as I like to call them, the September through December just feels like a straight sprint from Labor Day to January. And if you know you can't take more things onto your plate, then you can always say, not right now, but this would be a great 2026 opportunity.
Yeah. And so if you're dealing with burnout, just to kind of recap what we're just sort of had just shared, one is to get some rest, to kind of sort of evaluate things about, like, if you've got stuff that you see is not your jam, to figure out what your jam is and what makes you happy. And if it's not one of those things, see how that you can make a shift in that. And one of those things that you did bring up that you mentioned was about delegating tasks. And I think that that's a huge thing, that sometimes we want to try to do it all and we can't, and we have to realize what we're good at and what we're not good at. And for myself, is with accounting. So I have a business accountant to help take care of those things. I have other helps in other ways, but find out if there's something you love. Like, I like working on the website. I don't mind crafting and doing things like that, right? That part I don't want to delegate. And then the other third portion of that was
Getting support.
Getting support. Yes, getting support. Sorry. We were talking about so much of the other stuff. So getting support, which is so huge. I mean, I that's, one of the things that I most miss about working on my own is that I've not had, the colleagues around me. So I've had to work hard to help get that support network. Because like she says, when you find someone, other people are going through the same issues, it doesn't necessarily say it's going to make your issue different. It's just going to make you feel better about it and realize, okay, I can get through this because other people are, or you can bounce ideas off or that kind of thing. So, so kind of going into how can we avoid burnout? So those are some things we can do if we're feeling burnt out and where we need to make some shifts. But say we're in a good spot, we don't want it to happen, or maybe we left a place of burnout and we want to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost is noticing the early signs. So the early signs that we can start to look for is when you start dreading sessions, when you start, oh, I really hope my Friday at 8 a.m. doesn't show up, and you feel that way consistently, that's a telltale sign, right? If you are saying yes without checking your calendar. So if anything comes across your desk and you immediately say yes to it, and you're not actually verifying by looking at your personal and your professional calendar, that's another red flag. The other red flag is at the end of the day, you're irritable, you're drained, or you feel like you need something additional to help you calm down. So all of those things can be a telltale sign that you are heading towards burnout. The big one, though, is that you're skipping your own recovery, nutrition, and self-care. When you start skipping your own workouts, when you start skipping meals, when you no longer have time to practice your daily gratitude, or you're not reaching out to your friends on text or sending Instagram reels, if you're not taking care of yourself, that is a big, big red flag, that you're heading towards burnout. So start looking at your schedule of when is the last time you cooked yourself a healthy meal? When's the last time you actually ate lunch? When's the last time you went to work out by yourself and it wasn't because you were teaching the class? If all of those things aren't aligned, or you're missing things, especially those who typically put themselves second, looking at you moms, then we know that we are heading quickly down that road to burnout. And so I like to tell my clients, while we're in a good place, let's go ahead and establish habits now that you can sustainably keep. Let's go ahead and put into your calendar, when are you going to work out, and have it be a reoccurring event that stays on your calendar forever. When are you going to set time to eat lunch? When are you going to set time to practice your mindfulness or to have your social connection? And go ahead and put those into your calendars now so that they become habits. So when things start to pick up and get a little crazy, they're so ingrained in your daily routine and they're so ingrained in your calendar that you don't book over them because they've become just part of your natural routine, like brushing your teeth has become part of your natural routine.
Of course, all this that you're saying is like, we all know, because this is what we preach and tell our clients and about how you've got to make the time and
we all know.
Yeah. And yet sometimes we struggle to put that practice into ourselves, in ourselves. But that's really, like you're saying, the biggest thing is you go ahead and put that time in your calendar. So it's like a non-negotiable change, time in your day. There may be times that might need to shift up and down based on one thing or the other, but you have to make that equally a priority and not let your business become more a priority of you taking care of yourself. So what we're saying is that if you're not already implementing these kind of habits and sticking them in, start doing them. Pick something like your workout times or whatever to start putting in your calendar, your healthy meals, that sort of thing. And the other thing is that sometimes some of this stuff that you prep and you do and you take care of beforehand, even your admin time, if you know you have a dedicated time for that, it saves you time in the long run. You're not trying to just do stuff here and there and then stuff each time. You just know, I know I have set aside this hour to take care of these tasks. And it actually can make you more efficient with all, taking care of your business and everything else. So
that is one of the first habits that I strongly recommend all of my clients do, is to set guardrails up around social media so that you know when you are going to be on social media. So you are only going to get on from 3 to 3:30 every afternoon, or you're only on social media from 9 to 9:30 every morning, and like set guardrails up around it, because you will be taken down rabbit holes and you will squirrel out and you'll look down and realize that you actually didn't get any of your client reach outs done because you were busy scrolling LinkedIn. So setting up those parameters, like you said before, of know when you're going to do admin, know when you're going to do client reach outs, know when you're going to do social media creation, know when you're going to scroll social media. Like the more that you can set these habits into play, the more likely you are to keep them, even when life starts to get a little crazy.
Social media can be such a time suck, and I'm even guilty myself. There's sometimes like, why I just put it away. Like it's just such. It's so kind of want to just let's circle back to longevity. So we've talked a lot about the burnout piece, which I think is important for people to recognize what they need to do about it. But then I think there's portions of like people do get into becoming a personal trainer because they're passionate about it and they really want to make this a career. But as we were talking before we got, started with this, it's like, unfortunately, not that many people stick with it and they struggle with the longevity piece of it. So what are some ways that people can ensure that they can make their, a career as a personal trainer, more sustainable, the sustainability long-term piece of it outside of the burnout pieces we've discussed?
We have to realize that passion isn't enough to sustain you. Passion can feed you for short bursts at a time, and it cannot sustain you for a long period of time. And often we get into personal training because we love movement, we have a passion for movement, and we love helping people. But we need to be a little bit further thinking than that. And we need to make sure that we're setting up a business that has consistent systems, consistency being the key. And consistency means that you're not being reactive. Instead, you have already made a decisive decision about something. And it's not based on a whim or a feeling or a trend. It's this is what Monday looks like. This is what Tuesday looks like. The more consistent that you are in your business with these systems, the more that that business can continue forward. If your revenue relies heavily on you showing up physically, we know that your business is not going to have a longevity perspective because of your physicality of having to be there or having to be on point. I talk about this a lot with group fitness instructors over personal trainers. Personal trainers, when you're showing up physically, you're not doing rep and set. You're coaching. So in your case, we really need to make sure we're taking care of your voice. For group fitness instructors, it's their physical bodies. And so I often encourage group fitness instructors to become personal trainers so that their revenue isn't based on how many sets and reps they can do, but instead that they can really start to intersperse different styles of training. Then I think the big one as well is the idea of not being reactive to trends or to fads, and instead be proactive in being your biggest advocate. Of I'm not going to hop onto this just because everyone else is doing it. I mean, look, we all learned an Instagram reel dance at one point, right? Or a TikTok reel dance at one point. We all studied it and tried to figure it out. And look where that's gotten us. No one's famous off of TikTok dance reels anymore, right? It was a fad and a trend that came and went. We need to be a little bit more proactive when setting up a business. That includes not using the term just. I'm just a personal trainer. I'm just a cycle instructor. That's not being proactive as your biggest advocate. That is reducing you for what you do. And we deserve to have the careers that we want to build in the fitness industry. So I think those are the biggest ones for setting up a career of longevity is set up systems that you can be consistent about from here until the end. Make sure you're diversifying how you're showing up in the space. And then also making sure that you're not just being reactive and throwing spaghetti against the wall, that you're being your biggest advocate, you're being proactive in the decisions that you make.
I think it'd be fair to say, as far as the system and processes in place, I think seeing those areas that maybe you struggle in and how you can improve upon them. Like, we are great as trainers. We can create a program and all that and take care of our clients. But as we mentioned in the beginning, sales is one of the hardest things. Finding those client leads, taking them through the whole process, and then having to ask the big question at the end, do you want to start working with me or sharing that? And, if that's a big struggle for you and you're also struggling to grow your business, you've got to find a system and process for that like makes that easier for you. So it's not so hard, and you're increasing your client conversions, as well as also ways, especially if you're working on your own, all the admin stuff that you have to take care of kind of figure out how can, even if you sometimes, because you like, I've just got started, so I don't have that much to take care of. Like, you want to start now when you've got the time, and instead of like later on, how many's like, they just jumped into training and then they never did much past that, then they're having to then scramble to find those kind of systems and processes.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I think oftentimes we assume that just asking someone to purchase from us, that a yes or a no determines our value and our worth. And often someone is going to say no to you because they don't know, like, and trust you, right? Customers and consumers purchase based on trust, credibility, and loyalty. And if you haven't built that trust factor up yet, they're going to purchase from you nominally because we haven't quite built up those factors of know, like, and trust, or trust and credibility and loyalty. So I think with working with personal trainers, you have to remember that you've got to nurture your clients and bring them along on this journey with you so that they do start to know, like, and trust you. They do start to see you as the credible expert. They do become loyal to you. Then you can start asking for more financial compensations, bigger packages, more long-term commitment. But in the beginning, remember, it's going to equate by how much they know, like, and trust you. And that's another reason why I really recommend that entrepreneurs and solo trainers, you've got to be out in your community meeting people. You can't stand behind a screen and rely on social media to do your marketing for you, because people don't buy websites and companies. People buy people, and especially in the personal training world. So you've got to make sure that you're out in your community being the mayor of wellness. You got to be shaking hands and kissing babies. You need to be out there meeting people all the time, wearing your gear around town, having your car decked out with your logo, having business cards just throwing out of your hands as much as you can, because while it seems annoying, it actually is the way that you are going to get people to know you, which is step one, like you, and then trust you enough to buy from you.
Yeah, and that can be scary to have to go out and do all that. But I think that kind of ties in sort of the last piece I want to discuss as we kind of end this. And you're bringing up about how you're saying, I'm just a trainer. And a huge thing has to do with your mindset. It has to do what's up here can be really what's stopping you, instead of having that confidence in your abilities and what you do to speak about it, to share it. I think this is also more challenging for women to do, to be honest. Like we kind of like, I hope you like me, instead of being like, no, I am the answer to your solution for what you're looking for, and having that confidence in that. So, and again, that's all of like a shift in the mindset. So what are some mind shift strategies that you would sort of, help trainers, or maybe there's a mantra or something that we can kind of help give them as they're dealing with these challenges?
I think it goes back to, full circle, going back to the first question of like, what does success mean for you? What does success mean for you? And then turning that into your own personal mantra. So with mantras, I'm a firm believer in I am statements and visualization. There's a ton of research out there that shows that someone can increase their self-confidence level and their mental well-being by working through simple I am statements and visualizing. So if you are visualizing what you want to become, you are more likely to become it. And the same with the I am. If being successful to you means that you have a calm day, then you should be saying to yourself, well, I am calm, or I am energetic, I am organized. It's got to be something emotionally powerful for you in that moment. And so taking just 15 minutes a day to visualize what your day is going to look like, what your week going to look like, what is success, and then giving yourself that mantra to refer back to of what you need from that day in order to be successful will help you shift your mindset. I think the other thing that we should remember is that whatever we think inside of our mind is what comes out of our mouth. And we often forget that, right? And so if your gremlin inside of your mind is obstinately loud and negative, that will eventually come out of your mouth. So you've got to be able to flip your positive thinking. And the cool thing about the brain is if you study neuroplasticity, you can see that what you think becomes engraved in your mind and it becomes your fruition. So the more that you can tell that gremlin to shut up and to replace him with someone who actually cares about you, whether you want to envision that personal person in your mind is speaking to a loved one, a best friend, a child, that's how we should be speaking to each other, or that's how we should be speaking to ourselves internally. If you notice that your gremlin is taken over, is being extra irritable, being a little chaotic, there's a lot of ways that you can overcome that. You can actually physically imagine that it's a gremlin and you're throwing it out the window, or you're throwing it against the wall. You're getting rid of it in some form or fashion. You can also look into therapy as well. And I know that a lot of people think that that's like over the top and you just really stepped over the line. But when it comes down to feeling better about yourself, nothing is too far. And I recommend that people who are dealing with self-confidence issues, that they search out the therapy that feels best for them. That therapy could be art therapy, it could be talk therapy, it could be an enormous amount of things, but there needs to be some type of therapeutic component to helping you move over that kind of negative gremlin that takes over in your mind sometimes. So those are my big three is one, I am mantras, whatever you need to be, finding out, visualizing what success is so that you know what a successful day feels like, a week in the future. You can visualize yourself living it. You know what that connotation is. And then the last one is retrain that gremlin in your mind to speak to you like you would speak to your best friend.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thought too is to take whatever that I am, if you struggle with it, and put it somewhere prominent so that you see it often as a visual. And I think that one thing of like physically doing something, if you are dealing with like all those negative,
Mhm.
closed mindset, things, to write them all down. This is what I've worked with people before. Make a shift. What's the shift to make it a growth mindset type thing, and then cross out or tear off and throw out the other old mindset. But you do have to be careful because that stuff can seep back in. So you've got to somehow have some ways. And if, especially if it's just a big struggle, like you said, you might, get someone to help you, get with a therapist to sort of help you in those sort of manners. Jessica has been in the fitness industry for over 20 years. And in her bio, she didn't even list all the she's been with Bozu and Fit for Mom. I mean, she has been behind the scenes in name brand areas in our fitness industry. And, I've been in the fitness industry for 15 years myself, or around there, something like that. And it's sad to see how many people end up leaving it, that get into it and they're passionate. And you would say passion only gets you so far. But they really want to make a career in it, but they just really struggle with doing that. And we need people like you to stay passionate, and people need you to help them. If you feel that's your purpose, to be a personal trainer and to help people in that capacity, there are people out there that need you. So we just encourage you to make those changes that you need to in order to create the sustainable career that you really are looking for, that's not going to give you a burnout. And you've got to be very protective of your time and your energy. We'll go back to that. That's the big thing that we're saying is, if it's taking away your energy, then there's something that's just not a good fit. It's not a right, and something needs to shift about that. So Jessica, any last thoughts or words that you want to share as we conclude here?
You took the words right out of my mouth. Energy is your most valuable asset. And we're not just talking about physical energy. Oftentimes, that's what we relate to, is the physical capacity. But I'm talking about your emotional and your mental energy as well. And these are items that we often overlook. And they need rest, just like your body needs rest. And so looking at your day-to-day life and deciding, when are you taking those little mental and emotional breaks? When are you allowing your mind to have just as much rest as your body? And maybe you're finding a creative outlet in order to do that. Maybe you're gratitude journaling. Maybe you're calling a loved one. But where is it in your day that you're allowing your emotional and your mental energy to rebound and reset as well?
Great. Awesome. A couple of things. If you happen to be a trainer listening to this and you're working at a gym and I'm done being at the gym, it's just not working for me, and you're getting burnt out there. I get that because I was there. And you're wondering, what do I do to go on my own? Or even if you have gone on your own and you're struggling with how to grow it, what to do, be sure to check out the resource guide that I have for you. It's totally free. It's the solo trainer guide and checklist. It gives you all the actions you need to make sure you're on the right. I even talk about mindset in the beginning of it because that's such a key component to it. But all of the actions you need to start, launch, run, manage, grow your personal training business. And it's everything I wish I had when I got started. So be sure, if you haven't already, to grab that resource down below. If you would like to connect with Jessica, there's a couple ways you can do that. She's got a website, Jessica H. Maurer, and that's MAURER.com. We'll, of course, have the links in the show notes or in the description below. And you can also find her on Instagram, same thing, Jessica H. Maurer. And you can check her out there. So thank you again, Jessica, for joining me. It was such a pleasure.
It was lovely to chat with you. Thank you. And thanks for everybody for listening.
All right. Until next time, here's to the great that awaits.